Okay, so good morning, everyone. Today's Wednesday, February 10th, 17th, 2021. Time is 9:07 a.m. This is our monthly elected officials, which is a special meeting. Officially calling this meeting to order. Attending are Commissioners Duncan, Brooks, and Filios. Do we have any changes to the agenda? I'd like to welcome all our elected officials and or their directors. I guess we don't have any changes, so we'll move on to our first business item, which is Fair Booth for 2021. Leslie?
Sure. We're looking at potentially a county fair booth, and so I just wanted to put out to the elected officials to see if you wanted any part of it, if you wanted to come and staff part of it. I know that Search and Rescue has one, and I think Community Development is looking at one too. I don't know if they're going to combine with us or be separate. It's a 10-day fair this year. And so if you are interested in having any staff there, we'll kind of have to have the discussion whether that's going to be, 2 hours staff time or if it's going to be vacation time or what we'll look at. So don't need an answer now, but probably by the March 17th. What's today? Yeah, the March 17th elected official meeting. And if you have an answer before then, just email me and say, yes, we're interested, and then we'll kind of get a staffing schedule and figure out what we want it to look like. But I think in the age of information, it's just good to have the county's presence there to answer questions from citizens on taxes, elections, motor vehicle licensing, just all those fun things. Right. Probably just that you spin the wheel and get what you get that day. If you get the clerk, you can ask him all the election questions you want. So.
And we also have an organization chart that we'll typically hand out when we do presentations with the public. So I imagine we'd have a bunch of those in the booth so people can understand how we're elected or the various responsibilities and whatnot.
Yeah, and it wouldn't necessarily need to be manned by elected officials. I know that I'll probably hang out there for a little bit on a day or two, but could be staff or anybody if you feel that it would benefit your department to have contact with the community to get questions answered or just for, what do you call that, good rapport. So.
Most residents really don't have a good handle on the county because our organization is more complex than the city. The city's pretty straightforward. You have a mayor, you have 6 city council people, mayor's a tiebreaker. Ours is very different. Frequently we get calls for other EOs and say, sorry guys, he's your elected official, that's where you take your issue. But a lot of folks just still don't understand, especially with all the in-migration that we've had, so. Which kind of almost leads us into the second item, which is the town halls, which I think we'll address this probably in more detail. Go ahead, Leslie.
Yeah. So Chris and I are definitely interested in town halls. I know that Bill has held them in the past too. I just haven't talked to him about this agenda item. So we wanted to open it up to elected officials to see if any of you were interested in hosting or co-hosting a town hall. This is in the beginning stages, so we have questions like, do you want to do it the first Wednesday of every month? And then, we can decide, okay, Barry wants to do it once a year or doesn't want to do it at all or something like that. With the potential bond coming up, I definitely want to host a town hall about the bond to make sure that we can try to get as much community contact as possible. So that's definitely one that probably is going to happen near the end of March or sometime in April. To build the building. No. Or the attorney center.
Oh, okay.
Attorney center.
The new building that would go on this campus.
Yeah, between the old courthouse and the Justice Center. So That's what we're kind of looking at. So they can be held regularly, like I mentioned, or they can just be once a quarter. And if all of us, if we wanted to do an elected official panel, we could do that on a Saturday. There's just a whole bunch of different ways we can do it. Format could be similar to the legislative town halls, where you do some introduction, you talk about whatever hot topic you have in your corner of the world, and then answer questions. I mean, this is really kind of, we can mold it to any way we want to do it, but I just know that the BOCC is going to go forward with doing the town halls. So we definitely want other elected officials who may want to join in or host one on their own, which I don't mean without our help, but just without a commissioner. Yeah, Barry? Sorry, we got to get you a microphone.
Repeat what I said. It seems to me that it would be most effective and efficient to do it and try to encourage all the elected officials to be there. And what I don't know. I don't think monthly. It's too, to me that would be too much.
Yep.
Quarterly at most, and maybe even twice a year. Because what's going to happen is people will show up, even if you say this is the Board of County Commissioners or this is the assessor. You're going to have people either who don't, they're going to ask questions of people who aren't there to really respond. It's a treasurer question, it's a prosecutor question, and we're not there. So I guess that's my input.
Okay, so like the one for the bond, that would kind of be a BOCC. So not all the elected officials would necessarily need to be at that one. If we had specific topic ones, Barry, if you wanted to address juries and jury participation, you could have that one all alone, by yourself. You wouldn't need necessarily another elected official there. So point well taken, and if we narrow it down to a specific topic, then I think we could narrow it down by elected official as well.
I think in part what prompted this is we get a lot of questions about a lot of different topics. Probably the two most common, I would say, assuming there's nothing else hot on the agenda, would be growth and taxes. So even if we didn't do this as a group, I would do my own anyway and handle and field those questions. There is a new group now on the internet, and I can't remember the specific title. I think it's responsible or people for folks for responsible growth or something. And there are very serious concerns. There are those who feel growth is out of control, and then there are those folks who feel that no, it's really a question of private property rights. But it's an issue. Now, we don't have to do it as a group. I would do it. Bill has done a couple of these individually. I would certainly be willing to do it individually. I think what Leslie's trying to do is say, look, maybe we should open this up so that we can handle a wider range of questions. I mean, we can probably handle many of the questions that would come up regarding even your particular purview, but certainly not to the detail that you can. But that's up to you. Yeah, Jim.
Gone out of my way to do town halls. A lot of people do them just before the elections, but they're also great informational sources for people to get commissioner's thoughts out there. I don't have any usefulness in doing them as a board of commissioners or all elected officials, because I think what will happen is there'll be everybody vying for FaceTime with people, and I'm not interested in doing that.
I want to say I've attended Bill's town halls, and I used to like it with the free pancakes. I'm just saying. But one of the things that I think we could do more informally, and I believe it was started over in Post Falls, Clay Larkin used to do a thing, coffee with the mayor.
Oh,
We
yeah.
can do, and then it just kept on. Ron Jacobson's done it, and it's gone elsewhere now. And I think we could maybe promote that, coffee with the prosecutor. coffee with the treasurer. And that would eliminate some of the problems that you're discussing without the formality of a town hall.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Well, how do you feel about it? Are you willing? If not, we can do it as a BOCC, we can do it individually, it's up to you. Don't look so excited. Goodness gracious.
I have no objection to it, so if you want me to participate, I will. Am I going to be first in line? No. But I will participate, and if watching yesterday's demonstration, I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong with holding the mic, but your new name is
That was
Vanna,
my,
by the
my
way.
modeling debut, Steve.
Vanna Filios.
Oh, jeez.
So I don't have a lot of comments. Yes, I'll participate. I think it'll be worthwhile, especially with this bond issue. That should be a hoot.
Anyone else?
I would say I would participate again because of the bond issue.
Right.
And, yes, people need to know how the election's gonna work.
I thought you were volunteering.
All right, so then what I'm going to do is get a tentative bond town hall date on the calendar, and we can put the invite out, and who wants to come will come, and we'll go from there.
So elected officials that are opposing the bond, so either side of the bond, is that what you're?
It's informational, so it's talking about what the bond is for, why we're doing it. So,
Just to bring up to speed, Bob, basically what it is, we're shooting for a May election, a vote on the bond for the new building this year. And in order for us to do that, there is a March, help me out, Jim, Jennifer, is the deadline for the language. Now, we essentially have the language because Steve was good enough to draft it. So once we approve that and it goes to our clerk, then they will then, put it on the ballot. So I think what Leslie's saying is people are going to have questions about the ballot itself, what's it for. The point I think that has to be stressed is that the bond is not a question of whether or not the building gets built. The question is, do we finance it that way? Because there are other options. But to do a bond, it has to go to a public vote. And if they approve it, great. If not, then we have to look at other options.
Just to be careful, if you're explaining this in an informational setting, I don't think it'd be appropriate to take a position on it. Because then you're going to run afoul of a lot of different things. So one thing that I think we all need to do is remind ourselves of what we can and cannot say, what the narrative is going to be. People are going to be watching.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Good. You know what, let me,
Thank you. Yeah, I think what Steve says is very important, and even off-the-cuff comments like, well, it's going to take two to match my vote. You can't say those kind of things. If you do, you have gone afoul of what's going on, and it's very dangerous.
let me take it, Chairman. Please, here. Anyone else? But your point's well taken, especially if there are two or more of us county commissioners in the meeting. Opinions are off the table. If somebody asks me how I feel, no comment. Now, if I'm talking individually, it might be a different story. But once we pass it, or once we decide as a BOCC that it's on the ballot, it's on the ballot. It's just that simple. But anyway, Leslie, did you, anything else on that? Spending policy 930?
Okay, so one of my favorite things is policies and procedures. And I found that our expenditure policy 930 is actually worded in a way that did not support the original intent of the board that passed this. And legally speaking, it may run afoul of state statute as well. So I'm going to work with Dave Ferguson on some language. I'll bring it back before the BOCC and then bring it back before the elected officials once that is brought forward. I may end up doing it on email because I'd rather get this done sooner than the March 17th elected official meeting. Essentially, the policy was meant to say any expenditure over $5,000, budgeted or not, needs to come before the board. State statute doesn't necessarily give us authority to even allow expenditures of $1 without coming before the board. So Dave and I have got to figure this out, how to do this, because I'm telling you what, as much as I like to be involved in the money, I'm not going to hear things. I don't even want to hear things at $5,000, but I need to stay within state statute. So we'll figure out what that's going to look like. The fact that we also approve the payables each week, to me, that follows the intent of statute. So that's another discussion that we'll be having. But right now, our policy reads that if it's excess funds, you have to come before us. But the intent of the board that passed this was that if it's $5,000 or more, you need to come before the board. And that's not happening right now. I can definitely tell you that just by looking at last week's payables. So just wanted to let you know that is coming. If you guys have any ideas on what would work best for you, we just have some bigger departments, I think, that this is going to affect more than others. Airport's one of them, Parks and Waterways probably, potentially the Sheriff's Office, because you guys make, equipment purchases that sometimes goes over $5,000. So I just want you guys to be aware of the changes that are coming and trying to match state statute so we stay. I believe it was Dan, so I'm not sure if it was
Dan Todd J.
I think so, yeah. So I just know it was Dan Green.
Yes, the reason I ask is, so how do we know what the intent of that board was? That's a fair question.
Yes, because I've spoke to the lawyer who helped write this. And as well as past conversations with former Commissioner Green, he stated that that was their intent. So, no, good question. So just wanted to let you know that that's happening. So I'm going to do my best to not increase any type of bureaucracy, but follow state statute. That's my goal.
Okay. Any questions? Go right ahead.
So it's not going to look much different. We may end up just keeping the $5,000 cap and just saying, okay, if it's $5,001, you need to come before the board. Business meeting item. It's not going to be really any different than any of the contracts we sign. So vehicle purchases are a contract, so those things will come before us anyway. So I'm not thinking that hopefully it won't be too much, but
Pretty well thus far, and that's why I'm just questioning why it's being brought up again.
well, because number one, hasn't been being followed. Number two, the actual wording is not the intent. The actual wording says, if you're going over in a line item and you have excess funds, which doesn't make sense already, and you're going to spend over $5,000, then you need to bring it to the board. No, state statute says budget authority does not mean spending authority. So that's where we have to make it match. Ayla?
You might want to consider also thinking about recurring expenses.
Yes.
So you could enter into a contract, is that going to be $5,000 monthly, and recurring with the same contract, same vendor, or so forth? Or would it be capped within an annual period?
So my thought would be, if it is a contract that the BOCC's already signed, done. You don't need to come back when it's made the quarterly payments or the monthly payments. But if it is a vehicle, if it is some specialized equipment, you know, let's say a gun purchase or a vest purchase or something like that, that ends up being over 5,000, then those are the kinds of things that would go before us. But no, my intent, hopefully, if it matches the law, that if we've signed a contract, that's it. You don't have to come back every single payment, if that makes sense. Jim?
I think the first line, if I'm reading it, it says, if you go over in a line item, but you have excess funds, that puts it back on the elected official and their budget. I mean, if we get into a line-by-line budget item going over, it's going to be crazy.
And I don't want to do that. So that's where, I mean, there's some things that going over a line item, like overtime or something, you know, has been addressed in the past for the BOCC, because overtime is one of those things that, you know, probably needs to come before us and say, all right, you may end up having savings, but we need to know about this. We need to know, you know, where you're sitting, because we don't want to get into one of those situations. Now it's fourth quarter and you're over and we have no way to make it right. So, yeah, like I said, I'm going to do my best to absolutely keep the bureaucracy down, but make it follow state law.
Any other comments? Okay, moving on. Fourth item, March jury trials. Prosecutor McHugh. Barry, go right ahead.
So we've got, sorry to put my back to everybody, but I hate that mic. We've got jury trials starting first week of March. It's all contingent on, you know, our 7-day moving rate of infections, and so it can still be canceled, but the trending seems to be going in a positive direction. So I know that impacts a number of us here, our staffs. And so we should know this Thursday as to, in other words, they're giving us at least a week advance notice so that we're not in that position that we were last fall of having to scramble on Friday after they decided to cancel trials for the following week. So it's at least a week better in terms of the notification we'll get from the Supreme Court. So I just wanted to put that out there, and for those of us who are impacted by whether it's the parking or the employees who need to be there, we will be selecting felony juries out at the fairgrounds, which is what we did last fall. It worked well, and then doing the actual trials down here. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention, provide a few details, and answer any questions that anyone might have.
Questions for Barry?
We have a public who has a question.
Yes. Go ahead.
So the question was, what's going to happen with people that don't wear masks? Well, they'll have to. That'll be, I'm sure that'll be a court-imposed rule, just like it was the last time. And so jury selection is an obligation. It's not a choice. And so, you know, if there's individuals that show up and don't want to or refuse to wear a mask, they'll have to be dealing with the judge. I presume that they are, but honestly, the best way to find that out would be to call the bailiff's office, because I'm sure they're getting direction from the administrative judge regarding what is acceptable, but I would be surprised if that was not the case.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Barry? Okay, moving on to our final item, grade reclassification process. We have a process that's been in place, I guess, for some time. I think it predates my coming up to the board, where when an employee is being reclassified, we go out to the individual elected officials and get any feedback. Typically, there's little or none. I wanted to revisit the process because it's my feeling that an employee's level is largely the responsibility of the individual elected official. Between them, and obviously, ultimately, we own compensation, that is to say, the BOCC by statute. But I think where that individual falls in, it really falls within the purview of the individual elected official. And then, of course, HR. And the reason I say HR is because one of their roles is to basically ensure, or at least advise us as to parity, so we don't have the same job in two different departments with a wide disparity. And so what I'm saying is, it's more expeditious if we circumvent the process of going out for comment. So basically, if you have somebody that needs to be reclassified, take it to HR, we look at it, we make a decision, and we go from there, rather than going out, round robin to every other elected. So, thoughts? Go right ahead.
I wanted that, something you just said there, I would like a little clarification. You said you would get input, take it to HR, and you will make the decision. Is that what I just heard?
Well, we own compensation.
Yeah, not classification.
Well, one kind of leads to the other. Well, that's why I put it out there. If that's your opinion, that's fine. So you're saying classification does not necessarily result in compensation?
I didn't say that at all. I said you, as a board, do not own the classifications, do you? That's my question.
Well, and then we might be saying the same thing, because what I'm saying is if the individual elected official wants to reclassify, then I don't have an issue with that. My concern is that there be some relative parity, and that's where HR weighs in. That's what maybe there was a misunderstanding. Yep.
So I guess I would want to see a revised policy, because are you talking about only reclassifications or brand new job descriptions as well?
I'm talking about reclass. Usually a reclassification might occur either because of a change in the job description, or the individual has taken on additional responsibility, which again goes back to job description. Or there could be an error. We could have a situation where, as a result of a wage study, a particular job title was not classified correctly, so that needs to be amended, so that's another case.
Okay.
We okay?
Yeah, I just would want to see the updated language.
Okay.
To see the change. And you're talking policy 600, correct?
Yeah, I don't know what the policy number, is that what it is? Oh, yeah, that's right, policy 600, yeah. Good point. Anyone else?
Sorry, I just thought of one more thing. The only other thing I would want to make sure is it's still being handled transparently in open meetings for the public.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Anyone else? Anything else? Public comment? We're all part of the public. I'll say public comment. Nancy, does anyone, in the last two meetings, I guess, we didn't allow enough time for people to jump in, so I just want to make sure. Nothing? Okay, then. 9:35, meeting adjourned. Thank you.